What is laid upon us is to accomplish the negative. The positive is already a given. Franz Kafka. What makes the desire for happy endings so enduring? From the era of the ancient Greeks to the present day, whether it's a play, a novel, or a film, the yearning for an uplifting conclusion to a long-form work of narrative fiction has fostered expectations that few creators have felt disposed to ignore. The image of the artist as a rebel whose work reveals uncomfortable truths and explodes reassuring conventions has been a dominant meme in Western culture since the Romantic era. But financial imperatives, as well as artists' natural desire to have their work read, seen, and heard, have frequently restrained and modified their creative visions, and compromise, although often arrived at with struggle, is prevalent enough in the artistic realm to be considered a norm. When George Bernard Shaw's play Pygmalion was making its premiere run in London's West End in 1914, his original ending, in which Eliza Doolittle's newly earned abilities enable her independence, was modified by the producer and the actors to create a more conventional romantic resolution, in which her eventual marriage to Professor Higgins was at least strongly implied. When Shaw complained, the producer, Sir Herbert Tree, simply said, "My version makes money. You ought to be grateful." Shaw responded, "Your ending is damnable. You ought to be shot." The happier ending remained, much to the playwright's chagrin. Such concerns have also affected the development of the symphonic repertoire, principally through traditional associations of major keys with positive, uplifting sentiments and minor keys with darkness and gloom. Although these relationships appear simplistic, they are surprisingly pervasive. One survey of 237 symphonies that form the bulk of the symphonic canon revealed that 94% end in the major mode, a musical reflection of the same impulse that informs the inclination for long-form literary narratives to conclude on a positive note. We may live in a universe that's random and utterly indifferent to our hopes and concerns, but we're broadly averse to confronting visions of unpatterned existential vulnerability in the art we consume and embrace. Thus, for a composer like Tchaikovsky, the extremely unusual decision to end a grand symphony softly and in minor would not have been taken lightly. Written in 1893, the final year of his life, and premiered just 9 days before he died, Tchaikovsky's Sixth Symphony has always been surrounded by rumor and myth. And yet the fanciful tales associated with the piece are mostly post hoc rationalizations, apparently prompted by a poetic urge to cast the work as a musical suicide note. These depictions arise from conflations of the composer's unexpected death with the despairing atmosphere of the symphony's outer movements, exaggerated portrayals of Tchaikovsky as a depressive whose homosexuality was a source of constant torment, and misunderstandings of the work's subtitle, Pathetique, which describes the passionate emotionality that permeates the symphony as opposed to sentiments of self-pity. In fact, the Sixth was written during a period of artistic optimism. Tchaikovsky had spent most of 1892 struggling to compose a symphony in E-flat, but he abandoned it at the end of the year, saying, "It has little merit. It's just empty playing with sounds, lacking genuine inspiration." This decision proved liberating, and within 2 months, Tchaikovsky was writing enthusiastically to a friend about a new project. "You know, I destroyed a symphony I'd been composing. During my recent journey, I had the idea for another, Number 6. It will be suffused with subjectivity, and while composing it in my head, I wept a great deal. Upon my return, the work went so furiously and quickly that in less than 4 days the first movement was completely ready, and the remaining movements were clearly outlined in my head. The form of this symphony will have much that is new, and amongst other things, the finale will not be a noisy allegro, but instead a long, drawn-out adagio. How blissful I feel that my time is not yet past, and that work is still possible." Thus, the Pathetique, in spite of its defining aura of tragedy, is in many respects a statement of creative renewal, and undoubtedly the most original of Tchaikovsky's symphonies. The frequent changes of key, tempo, and mood in the first movement, the wonderfully off-kilter waltz with its unprecedented 5/4 time signature that follows, the third movement's unique synthesis of a typically brilliant Tchaikovskyan scherzo and a triumphal march, and the daringly somber finale that ultimately yields to oblivion, all bespeak an artist at the height of his powers, being led to new ground by the dictates of his genius. As we consider the tragic nature of Tchaikovsky's premature end, we may be heartened by an awareness that he departed with a sense of personal artistic fulfillment. To me, it would be unsurprising if this symphony was little appreciated, but I absolutely consider it to be the best, and in particular, the most sincere of all my creations. I love it as I have never loved any of my other musical offspring.